our pleasure to have here today Mona from L'Oréal. She is the Corporate Communication and Public Affairs Manager. And also her guests, the ladies, Kanda Boka is the scientific research grade 1 in Biosciences from Babeș-Bolyai University in Cluj-Napoca. We have with us Alina Seserman, assistant professor also coming from Cluj from the Babeș-Bolyai University, the Department of Molecular Biology and Biotechnology. Anita, she's coming from the National Institute for Lasers, Plasma and Radiation Physics from Măgurele. She's a scientific researcher of third degree. And Juliana Stoica, she is a scientific researcher in physics, and she is from the chemistry. These sciences winners of the last edition of L'Oréal program for women in science, L'Oréal and UNESCO Women in Sciences program. For how we come up with the idea of such a gathering today, it was that Ashoka, with the support of the Open Society Foundation, seek to create a bridge between the high-level conference organizers and the leading women, social innovators and entrepreneurs in different fields with a gender sub-representation through the She Says program.
I think we've lost Ruxandra. Maybe her connection is not as good. After 1 year of pandemic and international conferences, nobody managed to fix the internet to work as we wish, when we wish it. So I will take from here, and I start by thanking every one of you for joining today. This discussion that was organized by Ashoka, who gave us the opportunity to discuss about women's role in science. For the people watching us, the reason for you being here today is that 23 years ago, L'Oréal and UNESCO developed a program to support women across the world to help them fulfill their scientific career and research activity through a fellowship program. The reason is that L'Oréal and UNESCO seek to improve the representation of women in scientific careers. Ruxandra, welcome back. I took the lead of the discussion, and I was presenting the reason for this program behind L'Oréal and UNESCO, which is to improve the representation of women in scientific careers, starting from the fact that even if in some areas the representation of women in science is good, still when we talk about, I don't know, senior researchers, it's still a domain dominated by men, and only 3% of Nobel Prizes for sciences have been awarded to women, only 3%. And this is why we have this fellowship program that recognizes the work of extraordinary women like the four ladies that accepted our invitation today, and supports them to further continue their research work, because as we say it, the world needs science and science needs women.
Thank you very much, Simona, for this presentation. Also, the findings of the report, of the She Says report, and before I was cut, I was telling you that last year we were mapping over 300 conferences in Europe, the largest conferences, and by looking at who the speakers were, we realized that below 30% were women as speakers at this conference, and that's definitely, we have to do something about it. And that was somehow the first step of our project, this mapping. And then we gathered, and we are still open for this community female experts that to support and provide all the conferences in Europe with them as a valuable resource for knowledge and the presence in conference. And what it happened today, it was that we come up with this insight. Actually, this session was creating based on the insight of this community meeting that we had at the beginning of March, when we said that we have to gather and see exactly how we can overcome this and how can we find our way to the leading conferences as speakers on the main stages, because this is how we'll provide inspiration and this is how many other women will join. So my first question would be, why is it so important to have women in sciences? And I would like us to talk about the perspectives that you bring as women, that we bring as women in sciences compared to men, and all other things. Why is it so important to have women in sciences? So I'll put myself in it.
So from what I know, women bring a totally different perspective on the research activity, and I think that the reason for having women in science is this, that they see things through a completely different perspective. And I would like, I don't know, maybe Sandra, maybe you want to comment why it's so important to have women in science? I think Sandra has problems unmuting herself. Maybe Alina, you can.
Yes, I can dive in. I mean, I think from my personal point of view in Romania, but and also in the labs abroad where I did my research, it wasn't this problem. I mean, I think men and women, they strive exactly the same. It's the same striving. It's the same fight with the research which is unfinanced or underfinanced. And actually, for me, it's the same striving. I see my colleagues; they are also extraordinary researchers. I do not think they do things differently. Probably the women are more are caring for details. They are more passionate. Men, they are not like this. They are detached, and that's why they can solve problematic issues easily. But I think this is the same fight. I wasn't aware of this gender inequity in any lab that I was. So
about the data biases that we were talking about biases.
I didn't hear, sorry.
I said, what about the data biases people talk about in science? I'm talking about the fact that when it comes, for example, the crash test dummies, they were calculated to replicate the average size, let's say, of a man, but not of a woman. And also in the clinical test, also things weren't considered, considering the differences between the male and the male.
Okay.
And the female.
I am not aware because I'm involved more in the preclinical research, not in the clinical research. I'm not aware, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. So I mean, I think that it exists, but I cannot give my opinion on this because I'm not involved in this. Sorry. Probably if they work with such things.
Maybe Anita, you can tell us your perspective about differences in perspectives that men and women bring in science. You are on mute, Anita. We cannot hear you. Still no. You have to. Iuliana, maybe we are more successful with your unmuting. Great.
Indeed, I consider that women are much more meticulous in everything they do, paying more attention to details, indeed. and sometimes they are proved to be more creative than men, and more patient, and they don't give up. Men just give up. I don't give up. I try and I try and I try till the end. And
do you think that the empathy that women have has a role to play in science?
empathy can play an important role if the research is focused on the life sciences, I think. In the case of my colleagues fighting for suffering people, yes, we can talk about empathy. But in the physical sciences, my regard, I think empathy plays a secondary role.
Anita, what do you think? Is empathy playing a role?
I strongly believe that empathy is a useful skill, particularly in negotiations, for example, or for leaders. Why not? Because it enables you to put yourself in someone else's shoes. I know there were studies related to the fact that women are less represented in some more technical domains like physical sciences, for example, which may due to their higher levels of empathy. It is known that, okay, there are studies, but from my point of view, basically being able to put yourself into someone else's place and see their perspective could bring only advantages. By offering different perspectives on a research topic, and concretely, for example, in the medical field, in the medical research field, could be of a great importance and to the benefits, only to the benefits of the patients, to have, let's say, a doctor who spends time listening carefully or trying to find solution on their problems, because in fact research is born from the desire of researcher to find solution to the current problems of the society, of the mankind. And why not? Women are better at listening, isn't it? Yeah,
for sure. Sandra, how do you see empathy in research? Do you think this is what brings the difference between men and women in approach? I think we have again a problem with Sandra's connection, unfortunately. No, she disconnected again. Roxandra, we cannot hear you either. I think your microphone is, but maybe we continue discussing about, okay, we don't want to put a limit between women and men in research. There's no competitiveness there, as Alina said, that men and women are striving and fighting for the same and struggling with the same issues. But what do you think about competitiveness in research and in science? Is it good? Is it good to compete with others, or do you think it's better to unite the all the elements, to unite all the forces and cooperate for a greater good? Alina, I would start with you. How do you see competitiveness? Yes.
Okay, so for me, competition doesn't work. For me, it's stressful. So I prefer to be in a collaboration and do great things, do great research, than to be in a competition. And never, I'm not thinking, if I'm doing research, I'm not thinking to outperform my colleagues. I'm thinking to do my job as good as I can. So for me, at the personal level, collaboration works. But in the same time, you cannot avoid being in a competition. I think it's important to be human, even if you are in a competition, to be human, to be empathetic with your colleague, because at any time, at any point, you can go down end up with your research. So it's better to be empathetic and to do your best, I think.
Juliana, how do you see it? Do you think competition is good in research, or we better cooperate and collaborate?
I believe that there must be a balance between competitiveness and collaboration. Indeed, competitiveness is good, but when you want to evolve hierarchically to reach to the top. But for me personally, this doesn't work. So I like collaboration. I like teamwork. I think we have a lot to learn for each other, especially if the members of a team are part of different fields. So the resulting ideas in this case could be spectacular. So I want collaboration and teamwork, like Alina.
Sandra, for you, is competition between researchers good? Is it pushing things forward, or you'd rather collaborate to move the stone?
I hope that now you can hear me, because
yes,
it was a
finally.
very bad connection, and it was hard for me to follow up with the discussion. I think it's good up to a point. I mean, it's good to be to have for comparison to guide after colleagues who do great work, and to rely on scientific articles that are published in very high impact journals. But I think it's more important to collaborate. And for what I've observed, the women in research are not collaborating so much as men do. I mean, there was a report, and less than 20% of women are in international collaborations, in projects that are collaborating internationally. So this has to change a little bit in the next years, I think.
But do you think this is because women do not collaborate, or it's a gender bias here?
I think it's a gender bias. Yes.
Because when you are not with us because of your technical issues, we are discussing the women's role in science, and if it's a new approach that women can bring, a different approach than men that women can bring to the research activity. What do you think about this?
I heard a little bit the response of Anita. I am in agreement with her response. For example, from a medical point of view, you have to rely and look up of problems from a woman, from a gender point of view. So I think it's important if you test, for example, drugs on women, you have to rely on research that women are doing also. And I think it's really important to have a gender balance. And these are issues that are more and more often encountered. A gender balance, gender diversity.
No, thank you very much.
So on.
I would have wanted to listen to your perspective on this one as well, but I would like to move on to our next question in the discussion, and I wanted to ask you, which was the biggest professional challenge that you had, and how did you overcome it? I mean, and I'm really curious to see if your biggest professional challenge came from competition, cooperation, or gender biased issues. And Anita, maybe you can you want to give us your opinion on this.
Every day is a challenge, if you are asking me. Winning a project is a challenge due to the huge number of applicants. On the other hand, winning a project is also a responsibility. Lack of funds is a challenge. And if we are talking on the actual situation, for example, the budget has not been approved and 3 months of the year have been passed. We didn't receive our salary. That's the reality in Romania, for example, yeah. And our effort, the effort is great. When you write an application, you are waiting for an answer. There are some delays. If you don't have other funds from other sources, you know, these delays keep you in a place, you know, because you need materials, you need to maintain equipment, you need to pay people, you know. At the end, we are evaluated if we have fulfilled the objectives of the project, and that depends on us, but a little bit on the funds. So every day is a challenge. Yeah.
So what do you need to overcome daily challenges? Is it patience? Is it empathy?
I think we
or professionalism?
I think we need to a little bit of all of this, you know, and to find the balance between all of them, you know, to be patient, to be optimistic, and to have hope.
Juliana, for you, can you tell us one of your biggest professional challenges and how you overcame it?
Like Anita says, as researchers, I believe that we face professional challenges every day. But one of my recent experiences ended just last week, when I had to answer a few hundred questions from some reviewers regarding a paper submitted to nanomaterials. First, the editor gave us 5 days to answer, which was too short. So I asked for another 2 weeks. And so it was a forceful mobilization for 3 weeks with additional experiments and explanation. And in the end, the work was successful, but the effort was huge. So for me, this was a challenge, really was a challenge for so many hundreds of questions.
You consider this was only because that was gender bias, let's say, or it was just?
I don't know. I don't think so. No, I think the reviewers were with great experience and on the subject. And the only hope for them was to improve my paper, but it was very, very, very hard.
From Patricia Munoz, and she's asking, what do you consider is the biggest challenge for women in research, STEM especially? And it was also a similar question coming from them. So, Alina, what do you consider as being the biggest challenge a woman has in?
I mean, for me, I think also is the problem of my colleagues if they have family. For me, the biggest challenge wasn't in my professional life. I mean, I strive to do my best with the funds that I have, even if I am in a foreign country or in Romania. I think it's a general problem, the underfinance of research. But for me, my biggest problem is to balance the personal life with the professional life. So usually my personal life has to suffer. And I think this is a problem for every woman, not only for me. I mean, I feel guilty if I'm not doing my best at home with my family. I feel guilty if I don't do my best at work. So to balance this is the biggest challenge, not only professionally, but also personally. So I think.
And I suppose the pandemic didn't.
I mean, it helped in the first months because I stood at home. We were online, but this wasn't an advantage because my husband does the same thing as me, not in the same field, in the economics, but he does the same thing as me. So we were in separate rooms, and the boy was at my room, Mommy, I'm hungry. At his father's room, Mommy, Daddy, I don't know, I need a video. So it wasn't good at all. We were at home, but it was awful. So I hope this pandemic will end and we'll get our...
I think this is an international story. We find it in the house on all continents. But
I didn't, so I'm not the best example to give. I didn't. I strive. This is my favorite word this year. I strive. You know, I'm floating. I'm there. I'm good. We are healthy.
Okay, and if we are not talking about specific this year of a pandemic, how do you manage it for the rest?
You have to not think it so personally. You have to detach yourself, and you have to solve problems step by step. If you are panicking, you're not doing anything. So step by step, you can solve each problem. So detaching is the word, I think, for me. Yeah, the
methodology.
Take a step back and solve what you can solve with small steps.
Unfortunately, it was my time to disappear, and I reappeared to hear Alina's answer, which reminded me of a story that our country general manager, who is a woman, told me that when she was a country general manager for another company in I don't know what country on earth, she was receiving questions about how she manages to balance her family and career. She is a mother of two, and she was back then a mother of two teenagers, a country general manager of a multinational company in an African or Arabic country. So people were asking her, how do you manage? And she realized that nobody answered the men around her how they manage career and family. It's a question that we only ask women. How do you balance career and family and personal life? And this is one of the biases that women in some men-dominated professions have to face. And even if it's not a fair question, but I think it's a good one and might be inspirational for other women like you, working hard, working on a mission, because all of you have, and I know very well your missions. Some of you want to find the cure for cancers, cancer, other to improve implants and so on and so forth. So I keep on asking, how do you balance professional and personal life? Sanda, what's your recipe?
Yeah, this is a tough question. I'm trying to. Yeah, it's really difficult. It was really difficult for me as I returned from the maternity leave last year, and after 2 months, I was finding myself in pandemic. I try, as Alina said, to not to think when I'm working. I'm thinking only of work, and when I'm home, I try to focus on the family. It's really hard to balance between those two. Yeah, so I don't have a recipe. Yeah.
Juliana, you are mentioning earlier that you stayed in the institute in order to be able to attend this conference. Is this a recipe to separate very well the two tasks and spaces, maybe?
It's the only recipe. I am very lucky to have a family that understands me and supports me in everything I do. So I'm very, very lucky. Before this difficult period, sometimes I had the opportunity to completely disconnect from my professional life in the presence of my family. But now this is a little bit difficult because there are times when If I don't experiment at the institute and my little girl doesn't have the opportunity to go to kindergarten, I work at home. So I processing data and writing scientific articles and projects, and therefore the personal and the professional life overlap. But I try to pay maximum attention to both. And indeed, it sometimes is very, very difficult, but we have to cope. So I do my best.
Anita, I saw your reaction when I was telling the story of my country general manager, and I thought that you understand very well the fact that, yeah, it's a biased question. How do you balance personal and professional life? I won't ask you what's your recipe, because I imagine it's pretty much the same. But I'm asking you how important it is to have the family support. You know, it's a saying, behind each powerful man, that there's a powerful woman. What's behind the powerful woman? Is it a family, or it's only herself?
The real family support, that's for sure, because without real family support, it can be really difficult for women, because, as you said, all true women were given the right to work. The woman kept her traditional role. You know, she still remained in the majority, responsible for the house, for the family, for the children. And indeed, women researchers still remain the minority in science, in mathematics, in technology. And maybe now is the time to stress how important it is to encourage us, because Patricia Munoz Rocha asked on the chat, you know, as I really like to say, it's important to encourage little girls to pursue math, to pursue science at an early age, to want to become as much scientists as they want to be princess, as I said. Indeed, there are moments, difficult moments, when one or the other suffers, you know, or the family or the professional life. It is normal. Either you advance more slowly in your career because you choose to live on maternity leave, for example, or more slowly because you take the things slowly because you need to find the optimum balance between personal and professional life. Or you sacrifice your time with your kids, with your loved ones. You must always find the balance, because as my colleagues will approve for sure, in research there is no fixed program. There is a lot of pressure to get results from conducting original experiments. So family support and balance is essential from my point of view. And I strongly believe that the soul is healed around children. So we are lucky girls from that point of view. And when nothing goes well, a husband hug always goes well. So I don't know, always helps to distress yourself after a hard day of work, let's say so. So as Alina mentioned earlier, in the context of the actual pandemic, I faced the same difficulties as my colleagues mentioned. I oscillate between feeling the more inefficient employee and who, of course, is curious to find the latest updates about fighting against the virus and so on, and the more nervous wife, and the most unavailable mother, let's say so. In short, two major roles on the same time, space and energy. Yeah, you mentioned well, space and energy. And yeah, the balance is the right word here from my point of view.
But again, let's not forget that you did it really well last year, because at the end of 2020, you won such an important fellowship, so from L'Oréal and UNESCO. So even though you don't have a recipe, you did it very well. Whether it was step by step or with the support of your families. But again, congratulations, because you did it really, really great last year. So again.
I think adaptability is one of our greatest qualities as women. We can adapt
For sure.
faster than men, so for sure.
Okay, so I was curious about when going to conferences, probably sometimes you are only one of the few women, sometimes maybe single women there on stage, a speaker. And my question is, what would you tell one of your lab mate or whatever colleague? She's nervous about giving a talk at a conference because she's one of the only speaking there. What would you your advice? What would be your support? How it would look like? When you okay.
I can answer this if you want. In this case, I would tell my roommate that it doesn't matter if it is or is not the only woman speaking. If you are confident in your solid research results, you should put aside your emotions, because in this context, it really doesn't matter the gender of the speaker. You must be confident.
Experience in a conference as a speaker.
Afraid we didn't hear you well, Ruxandra. Can you please repeat?
I was asking, what was Juliana's first experience as a speaker?
My first experience as a speaker, emotions, very, very, every kind of emotions. But when I started to speak, they're all gone. So I was feeling great and in my space.
Can you share with us any of your experiences from conferences?
I think Ruxandra's mic is not helping her very much, but because we pre-aligned with the questions, I can carry on. And maybe Sanda, you can share from your thoughts. What would you advise some lady delivering a speech? I know that all of you are nervous to speak in public. You shared this with me, and it's normal because you are used to work, not to talk about your work. But when you do it, how is it? What advice do you give? Because one of the reasons we are here today is that Ashoka wanted to increase the number of women and address the topic of women not being one of the main speakers in conferences. So what would you say about it, Anna?
First of all, I didn't encounter any situation in which there were not women in the conferences. I watched a lot of women were giving talks at conferences, and they were really inspiring. They had really inspiring presentations. My advice would be to focus on the research and on what you are presenting. And this is it. My first presentation was at a conference in 2010. I was really nervous, but I was really satisfied after giving the and making the audience aware of what are you studying and what's the research, and moving on with your research and sharing it with the public. I mean, this has to be the only aim of your talk. Of course, as you said, we are more used to work than to speak about our work. But I think that this has to be part of our work too. Speaking about your work and sharing the information you get from your lab work. I mean, it's a really important part
work.
I'm thinking now that maybe the fact that you are used to having women as speakers in the conferences that you attend is linked to the field of activity. I was discussing at some point with some ladies in the financial services and legal advisory, more like kind of services. And they said that every time they have a difficult client, they ask the men in the company to convince them to speak in front of them, because in this sort of services, men are more credible than women. It was not a survey, it was not science behind, but just common sense, what they thought. So every time they had to negotiate with some more difficult man or more difficult client, either businesses led by men or women, they would go with the men first. I don't know, maybe it's something that is linked to the field of activity. Anita, what do you think? Is it something that might be linked to this? You didn't unmute yourself yet. It's not working.
No, okay. I succeed. It could be. Also, as I agree with Alina's first intervention, it could be a segregation, depends on the domain of research. For example, I strongly believe that in some research domain like cosmetics, for example, because we are at, we received the L'Oréal award, like in, I don't know, in pharmaceutical, maybe in medical fields. I think this report between the number of women and the number of men could be in the favor of the women. Depends on the domain. Yeah, it could be possible for sure.
Thank you. Alina, your experience on this one, are you the only woman giving speeches in conferences, or you are surrounded by peers?
No, I mean, in every conference that I participate, they were both men and women, but I'm nervous if they are both or men. So I was so shy when I was young that I couldn't look. Even if I entered the room, I couldn't look the people in the eyes. So I was so shy when I was young. But with time, with experience, now I'm teaching to my students. With experience, with the practice, you overcome this. So I would like to tell you an experience. It wasn't from my conference, where in the first minutes I was stressed, and then it was all about my work, so I could give my speech. But it was a funny moment when I had my first class with the students. I had to give a class for 2 hours in biochemistry, because I teach biochemistry, and I was so nervous. I was 20 years and something, that I finished the class in half an hour. So this is a stressful thing for me, to speak in public, but with time, after 15 years almost, it gets better. So practice. And I usually imagine some funny things about the audience, so that helps me overcome my emotions. So if they are men, I imagine something funny about them. So
this is a nice tip.
Yeah, I have.
This is a nice. Yeah, for other nervous people to imagine their audience, to picture their audience in relaxing ways. Thank you for sharing it with us. I think we are approaching the final of this session, and I hope Ruxandra can unmute herself to guide us through the. Okay, now you are with us.
Do you hear me now? Because apparently my microphone is randomly working. So, and the last question, and I would like an answer for each of you. What's the positive try to create for the women? Well, how would you build on this? one quick answer from each of you, please. And this is the way we will end our session today.
I will, okay. I think that doing the best of what you are doing is the best advice. I mean, if you are trying to do your best, this is it.
Hardworking and persevering and do serious research, you have the chance to win.
Okay, I would say something. I'd like to say something. So if I would have that power, I will create a lab with where to encourage women to be strong, to have faith and confidence that their work is valuable and they can do things as well as men can do. So this barrier, I would overcome this barrier if I would have that power. Women must be strong and confident.
I think it's my turn. I would advise my younger colleagues, let's say, to speak up, even if your voice shakes, just speak up. Speak louder, just to assure everybody that woman's voice needs to be listened. The only way to be heard is to actually speak up. As a positive change, I would like to leave for my colleagues. Look, now I will launch a WISER in the air, let's say. Maybe I would like to extend my activity to teaching. I must confess that the idea came after when having an oral presentation at an international conference, a teacher congratulated me for the presentation and asked me at what university do I work, and that he thinks that I will be suitable for teaching. And maybe that's what I would like maybe I would like to qualify in my field of research, to be able to take over under my guidance colleagues for a doctoral, for a master degree, for a bachelor degree, to support and guide them in choosing a career in science. And at the end, thank you with gratitude for the chance to make my voice heard and on such an important subject.
Much and good luck to you all, and hope we meet soon. Thank you. Thank you
for having us in this session, Roxana, and thank you for being with us.
Thank you very much.